Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema is leaving the Democratic Party. Krysten announced the switch this morning, saying her politics don't fit in either party.
As an Arizona independent. I know some people might be a little bit surprised by this, but actually I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, a growing number of Arizonans and people like me just don't feel like we fit neatly into one party's box or the other. And so, like many across the state and the nation, I've decided to leave that partisan process and really just focus on the work that I think matters to Arizona and to our country, which is solving problems and getting things done.
So your voting record is pretty capital D Democratic. I mean, your views are generally that of a moderate centrist Democrat. How does leaving the party change how you do your job?
Well, I don't think anything will change about how I do my job. Arizonans sent me to the United States Senate to be an independent voice for our state, and I'll continue doing that. What I think is important about this decision and this move is that I'll be able to show up to work every day as an independent and not be, stuck into one party's demands of following without thinking. And as we've seen in recent years, both parties have created this kind of requirement or a pull towards the edges that you just unthinkingly support all of one party's viewpoints. It's made it difficult to find folks who are willing to work together and solve problems. Now, as you know, Jake, we've been able to do a lot of bipartisan work over the last couple of years, and I'm incredibly proud of that. And I think it's important for folks across my state and frankly across the country to say, yeah, there's someone that's kind of like me, doesn't fit neatly into one box or the other, but is standing up for their values, for what they believe in, and is doing it without trying to get one over on the other party or beat the other guy.
You're here to make.
The first-term Arizona senators' change to independent is unlikely to change the power balance in the next Senate, other than giving more political power to herself and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Democrats will still have a narrow 51-49 majority, including two independents, Senators Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Angus King of Maine. Sinema declined to say if she would caucus with Democrats. Sinema is up for re-election in 2024 and has not addressed if she will run for re-election. Joining me now to discuss how this could impact the Democratic Party, we have Tamia D. Booker, the founder and managing director of T. Booker Strategies. Mrs. Booker, welcome to the show. First of all, I have to say, girl bye with Kyrsten Sinema. Everything she said was nothing more than grandstanding and ridiculous political ridiculousness, and her trying to get the spotlight back on her instead of giving us time to bask in the glory of Senator Warnock's reelection. What are your thoughts on what we just heard from Kyrsten Sinema?
Yes, first of all, you made me laugh. Thank you for having me here. It's the timing. A lot of people do not agree with. I've talked to many operatives today. And the one thing I will say, though, is it's not quite surprising, right? Like the party has been pretty frustrated with her from quite some time. You've seen major parties or party organizations pull their endorsements from her. You've seen a lot of her constituents who are left-leaning be very frustrated with her. So it's not quite surprising that she's doing this, but the timing is a little frustrating. And the fact that she says that she won't she said she made a comment saying about the Democratic Party and not representing that, but she ran as a Democrat. And so there's a bit of contradiction in her statement because she's keeping her committee assignments as a Democrat. And that's where the frustration is for a lot of people within the party right now, because it has felt like for some time that she's kind of danced between the two. And you see in her statement here, and then also what has been written, that same contradiction. So you can see why people are frustrated, but she's still going to caucus as keep her committee assignments as a leader in the party, right? And then she's still not going to be a Democratic candidate. It's just very interesting to me and to many of us. To say
right. What I found interesting is this whole notion that she is in lockstep with a lot of Arizona voters, as though Arizona voters are increasingly independent, when we just saw the Democrats sweep almost every single major statewide election in Arizona. Can you just talk about that disconnect in terms of the success we're seeing Democrats have increasingly in Arizona, and the way she seems to characterize it as though Democrats and Republicans are on the outs equally in her home state?
Arizona has been trending blue for the last couple of election cycles. I was in the Senate when she ran in 2018, and there was a lot of support behind her then. I think what she's doing at this time is really making an effort to do what's in her best interests. If you look at the tide of what's happening in Arizona, you would think that she would run as a Democrat again. But I think dealing with the party consternation, there has been open conversations about other Democrats running against her because she has wavered in her support. Even though she's voted heavily Democratic on many bills, she has wavered support on many critical bills. And so with that, I think also politically on the electoral side, she decided maybe to remove herself from a future potential primary fight and stay and run as an independent, so she doesn't have to necessarily run for the Democratic Party seat.
Speaking of primaries, I remember shortly after the midterms, people suddenly started circling the wagon around her. Whereas before it was like, let's make Sinema and Manchin irrelevant. It became, maybe we don't want to give up the advantage of incumbency and primary her. I think that she does have some stiff competition in terms of the primary with, for instance, Congressman Ruben Gallego, or if any of the other people that just recently won statewide decide to jump in the race. How does her status as an independent, do you think, impact the 2024 electoral politics? Is she obligated to, in some way, run as a Democrat and deal with the primary challenge there, perhaps? Or does she have that ability in Arizona to run as an independent and make this a three-way race?
Yeah, so she can run as an independent and make it a three-way race, and the Democratic Party can run a candidate. And that's why, like you mentioned, Congressman Gallego has been mentioned a lot. I've seen today in the press and some others as possible candidates also in the Democratic primary. So she could do that. And I think that's why she may be doing this for her own goals, is to be able to run in that sense. And I noticed that when she said, I'm running to represent all of Arizona and not one particular party, it sounded to me a bit like a campaign, a future slogan. And I think that may be the angle that she's going with at this time.
But, it almost seems like a kamikaze strategy, right? Because at the end of the day, Arizona is at most a 51-49 state when it comes to the way that people vote there. 51-49 can go either way, Republican or Democrat. So she has no path to a majority vote knocking off Republicans. The Republicans are going to get their 49 either way. And so how much do you think this really puts pressure on Democrats to kind of step aside and either allow her to take the reins as a Democratic nominee, even though she calls herself an independent, or to try to discourage anybody from running as a Democrat while she runs as an independent?
I think it really depends on seeing how, when you are putting together campaigns, you have to have a lot of conversations. You have to poll the people and see where they're at. And I think in this instance, we do have, in other instances, we do have members who are independent, like Senator Sanders, Senator Angus King, who are independents but caucus with Democrats, right? And if that is the route she's trying to take, that's a different conversation. But I do think now, in seeing that she has talked with Senator Schumer, I'm curious to see what the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee will do with this race. But she could go many different directions with it.
Right.
That's where we're at with it.
Well, she's accomplished her mission, at least in the near term, because we're talking about her. And she's making herself more relevant when we at least could have made her a non-factor, at least for the next 2 years. So mission accomplished, Kyrsten Sinema, but still is girl bye. Thank you, Tamia Booker, for joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered tonight.
Thank you for having me. Have a great evening.
You too. Okay, we're going to bring in the panel. We have Kelly Bethea, JD Communications Strategist, Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show, and Matt Manning, Civil Rights Attorney. Hey, y'all. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I like to say happy Friday, you know what I'm saying? Because it took a long time to get here. This has been a very busy week. We had the victory in Georgia, which now seems miles away. But what do you think? I'll start off with you, Kelly, with Kyrsten Sinema trying to steal the spotlight today with this ridiculous announcement that she's made.
I wasn't even thinking of it as a stealing spotlight moment. I thought of it more so as a slap in the face to every Democrat who voted for her in Arizona. Because at the end of the day, they didn't vote for an independent. And I think it was real slick of her, considering that she didn't just get reelected. Her next election isn't until 2024, I believe. Right. So it just kind of feels like, it just feels like a slap in the face to anyone who voted for her. And it also feels like a way for her to maintain power, a modicum of power in the Senate. I think she got used to being catered to these past few years with the half and half Senate, and she liked the people holding court for her. And now she's trying to find another way to basically maintain a modicum of power. Because once you taste it, you're going to want some more of it. And I feel like Manchin might do something similar. Maybe not the independent route, but I feel like he'll, flip over backwards to find a modicum of power too. But I felt bad for the people who voted for her because they didn't vote for an independent. So I'm curious to see how she's going to conduct herself in this next Senate because, again, she's an independent, but she's keeping her Democratic assignments. So I don't know. It's messy.
She definitely wants to have her cake and eat it too. Michael, Kelly brought up Manchin and where he plays in all this. I think we've seen with this past election cycle that there is no way in hell somebody like Manchin could win a Republican primary. So my prediction would be that he kind of stays put. But what do you think about how Manchin and Sinema will play in this next term of Congress with this news that came about today of Kyrsten Sinema?
Yeah, well, Manchin's not going to join the Republican Party because if you look at his voting record, he votes with Democrats more so than Republicans. He voted for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. No Republicans voted for the American Rescue Plan. He voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. No Republicans voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. So when you look, he voted for most of Biden's federal bench nominations. He voted for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Not even Senator Tim Scott, Black Tea Party Republican from South Carolina, voted for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. There's only 3 Republicans that voted for her. So even though Manchin tanked Build Back Better, which was really Democrats' fault in the House, because he already said he wasn't going to vote for the child tax credit. He already said he wasn't going to vote for that, and they took it out of the bill. Democrats in the House took it out of the bill, put it in at the last minute, passed it, then sent it to the Senate, and he backed out. He did what he said he was going to do. So with Sinema, I think she is trying to reassert power after this historic win that took place yesterday with Senator Raphael Warnock, and a 51-49 Senate gives Democrats a much stronger position than a 50-50 Senate, because in the 50-50 Senate, Chuck Schumer and McConnell had to agree to terms in how to govern in the 50-50 Senate. And you also had an equal number of Republicans and Democrats on the committees. And this allowed Republicans to block federal bench nominations, do a lot of damage. Now with 51-49, it gives Democrats much more power, and Republicans can't block bills and block federal bench nominations like they were. So here you have Sinema trying to reassert her power, but she's still going to conference with Democrats, and hopefully Ruben Gallego will run in 2024 and crush her. She needs to be crushed. She needs to be destroyed. Okay. And also the same thing with the White Nationalist Party. They need to be defeated. They need to be crushed and destroyed as well.
I completely agree. Matt, you get the last word on this, then we'll head to a break.
Well, lucky for y'all, I'm not going to add too much, but I do think it was about self-preservation. I think it was a matter of her trying to preserve her own electoral chances going forward. I do think academically it opens up a good conversation about plurality and the idea of not being adherent to a two-party system forever, right? The idea that we can have other iterations of how people think. But I think in this instance, it was solely to benefit herself. And I agree with Michael's sentiments. She needs to be obliterated, to use a different word, because I think she's just trying to hold them hostage, has held them hostage throughout this last couple of years. And I think that Rep. Gallegos and maybe others might be a good source of attack on her to, have a check on her and her unbalanced power.
Oh, I think that she might have been a little premature and where her leverage would be if by announcing so soon. We still have 2 years to get Gallego up there to where she would be absolutely crushed and obliterated. So we're going to see how this plays out, but it's still womp, womp, womp Sinema. We're still celebrating Raphael Warnock. All
right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.